The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.
Hi, good day. I am a 30-year-old male working in the mining industry, and my question specifically relates to the repayment on cars and kind of just guidance in terms of making better decisions going forward. So a couple of years ago, I currently have two cars financed. One is the family car that the wife travels with the kids, and that is a Hilux double cab Bucky. And then I commute with a Volkswagen Polo. Both of these have about 3-4 years left on the repayment. But I want to find out just kind of if you want to reset the decisions made. I wouldn't say necessarily it was bad decisions, but it's definitely something that we're currently using and that we can afford. But of course, that chunk of money would be very much worthwhile to be used on some other stuff in a month. So what I want to find out, I've looked at kind of selling these cars and then seeing what we can get for a lower premium per month, putting down a bigger deposit and so on and so forth. But currently, it just doesn't make sense to sell these cars. Because of the value that you're going to get from them, it kind of looks like you will be taking a step back rather than taking a step forward. So I kind of just want to find out: am I missing something? Are there other options that we could pursue in kind of making sure that there's less money being spent on vehicles per month and kind of more space towards the kind of savings, whether that would be an emergency fund or an RA or whatever the case might be. Part of the reason of this decision, we actually just had a premium on one motor vehicle, and then last year October I totaled the Polo that I commuted with, and then of course had to buy a new one. And that's where the double premium comes from at this stage. But nonetheless, I kind of just want to find out what is there an option we need to do. Kind of need to stick around for the next 3 to 4 years and focus on getting the debt off, or do you do something else? I would love to hear some feedback on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your question. So I think, understanding the impact of car finance on your personal finances is, it's a real step to kind of financial freedom because car companies are fantastic sales organizations, and they convince us that the affordability of a car is not the value. In other words, you pay 500,000 Rand cash for the car, or 900,000 including finance charges. They'll say to you that your affordability is 6,000 Rand a month, and so they get you to focus on the bright shiny object rather than the big scary thing that's called compounding. And so your question is something that a lot of people face and a lot of people deal with, and then of course there's the emotional aspect of driving a nice car and being safe and all of those things. So I'm not dismissing the impact of being sure that you drive a safe car and a reliable car. I think on South Africa's roads, we need to be sure we can get from A to B, safely. So where you are now, you're correct. So you're in a position where selling the cars to try and get that debt off your balance sheet is not going to help you much, because you still need cars. You still need to get from point A to point B. And so you're in a position where selling the car might get you back the money you paid, but you end up nowhere. And so your position now, I feel, is that you should actually focus on getting these cars paid off faster than what the term is. So if they've given you a 4-year or goodness gracious, a 6-year term on financing the car, then what you want to do is make sure that you pay off that car faster. Typically interest rates on vehicles are very high. The finance companies love financing vehicles because they get to charge prime plus, in most instances. And so, that's a much more lucrative form of debt for them. They'll tell you that there's much more risk and what yada yada yada. It's fine. That's whatever the deal is. But for you and me trying to finance a car, it means that we pay a lot more in interest on a car than we would on a house. And so your focus here should be on putting in a bit of extra money as often as you can into the car debts, because that impact is enormous. Your debt is over let's say it's a 5-year period, and so if you're putting in extra money every single month, it means that you're actually knocking down the interest that you owe much faster. And that will have an enormous impact on freeing up your cash flow a little bit later in life. So you are in it now. You're correct that you're kind of stuck in the deal, and so the what next is you need to pay those cars down faster, and then you need to pay them off, and then you don't replace those cars for quite a long time. We've had some really kind of expert guests on this on honest money, and you should really go and listen to the shows around buying secondhand cars and financing and refinancing and all of those topics. And the one thing we've learned on honest money is it doesn't make sense to rotate your cars every 3 or 5 years. You really should try and drive the cars for at least 7 or 8 years. And some of the most financially successful people we've interviewed on this show have driven their cars for a decade or longer, and their only requirement from their car is that it's safe and reliable. And so if you want the honest money answer, the reality is you should pay off the car and then you drive it for as long as possible, because that gets you out of this financing problem that you're in now, and it also gives you time to start building up your cash for the next vehicle replacement. So my real view here is you pay down the car. Let's say it takes you 4 years, and you drive it for another 4 years. If you manage to do that, yes, your trade-in value on the car won't be amazing, but it doesn't matter. Your trade-in value is going to be lousy anyway. That's the nature of secondhand cars, and so you drive that car for as long as you possibly can while it's safe and reliable, and the services don't cost you more than the value of the car. That's probably a nice indicator. And you set aside, let's say your debit order was 6,000 Rand a month into the car. At least set aside 3,000 or 4,000 a month into building up a cash balance, to then pay for a car with cash plus the trade-in when it comes time for you to buy another car. And you do not do anything with finance until you've got enough cash to buy the car. So don't be tempted by what the car company says to you about, gee, you can really afford to put down a massive deposit if you put in the cash and the trade-in of your car, and then your repayments are only 4,000. That's the trap. So you've got to avoid that trap. And the way you do that is buy the cars cash. Looking at monthly affordabilities and interest rates, and yes, you get some tax deduction if yada yada fish paste. All of that stuff is nonsense. The deal is stop financing cars. That's actually the way you kind of build your financial freedom, and that means taking some kind of trade-off decisions. Do I want to drive a new Bucky every 5 years, or do I want to drive a new little sedan every 5 years? Am I going to be embarrassed because my friends start teasing me when the car looks a bit old? Who cares? If you've got a big investment account balance and you get to financial freedom 5 or 10 years before they do, who cares what they think? And that's the reality here, is we care far too much about what everyone else is going to think. And we then end up making lousy financial decisions because of silly factors that won't matter in 6 months' time. So I'm sorry that this is tough love, but I think the reality here is you need a car to get from A to B for work. I understand that. We're not all born with loads of money where we can start by buying our cars cash. So the first time you finance a car makes all the sense in the world. Second time doesn't. The second time was a real decision. And so there, I think it makes sense now to build up your cash balance, drive the car for longer, and then the affordability is the cash you've built up plus the trade-in of your car. That's the car you can afford. If you can't afford the car you want, keep driving the car you've got and keep saving until you can buy the car. And that will be the way that you start to create a gap in your budget to save a bit more money so that you're not paying the finance charges to the banks. That's really, it's that simple. I'm not saying it's easy, because it's always tempting to kind of see the new Bucky or the new car and then feel, a little bit special for a week or two while you've got the new car smell. But, New cars stop smelling like new cars after a while, and they lose a huge amount of value every single month that you own it. So the only way to protect yourself is drive a car for a very long period of time, because eventually that drop in value every month becomes less and less and less, and it reaches kind of a baseline where you're going to get a small amount of money for the car on trade-in, but you're saving a huge amount of money to build for your financial freedom, and you've got a cash balance to pay for a car when you want to. And that's the way you take control. That's the way you build your financial freedom. It might mean that you've got to change your behavior and stop looking at car magazines and car adverts online and those kinds of things, because that's really tempting. And if you're married and your wife's not a car person, that's the person you talk to about cars. Not your best mate who also loves vehicles and will be the enabler that tells you now's the time to buy another car 3 years in. Don't worry about the finance charges. Those people, it might be nice at a braai, they're really not helpful for your financial freedom. And the real thing here is stop comparing yourself to everyone else. You don't know what's going on in their financial position. And if they're driving the big new Bucky and it's got all the latest gadgets, they've probably got massive debt. And if you're building up an investment balance, well done. That's the game. Your job is financial freedom, or do you want to impress your friends? Make that call, and then decide what cars you want to buy and how you're going to pay for them. I hope that helps. I really appreciate your voice note. It sounds to me like you could be Eben Etzebeth's younger brother. I hope you're not. Otherwise, I'm going to get a hard time from you. And please keep those calls coming. We love to answer your questions.
The Honest Money podcast is brought to you by Prescient Investment Management. We consider everything to give you the advantage. It's the future of investing. Prescient Investment Management is an authorized FSP.